Okay, what I want to do here is describe a few things about the cedar log mold. I'm going to describe how you use these blocks and basically how these blocks are constructed. Here's an example of one of the cedar logs, and if you can see, it's kind of an interesting shape on the end. We have a flat bottom, we have a flat top, and the sides are rounded, but they're not perfectly round. They're kind of squeezed in oval shape a little bit, and that's to allow us to be able to get it out of the mold and to be able to actually cast it successfully, as well as still give sort of a rounded shape on it. And if you can see, here's kind of a sample of one side of the 3-inch log, and here's what the top looks like, and around to the other side. And then of course the bottom is actually the flat scraped side of the mold, and that scraped side will be down against whatever surface you're actually putting this log on. What I want to mention on here are the sizes. This log is exactly a 1/2 inch high, and it's also exactly 1/2 inch wide. And that doesn't, it may not seem possible, but it actually is. If I actually put my calipers on this thing and run it side to side, that thing is right on a 1/2 inch side to side from round to round. And top and bottom, of course, it's also, depending on how you scrape it, it's a 1/2 inch top and bottom as well. So you try to want to scrape it as good as you can so it'll remain a constant height when you're building. With it being a 1/2 inch width, the nice thing about it is you can stack all these logs side to side, and they will stay a consistent width if you're stacking them across like that way as a floor. So if I took a 2-inch log, you got a 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. A 2-inch log would exactly fit there, and everything would line up real nice if you happen to want to use it for a floor or a porch, or some other kind of building method that you're trying out here. Another thing that's really interesting about these logs is even though that these sides are rounded, they're not exactly perfectly round. There is actually a small area in the center of each of the sides here that's really flat. And the only way to describe that, and that's what holds its 1/2 inch shape, is if you take this log and lay it on its side, it will lay perfectly flat on its side. And you see how I'm kind of leaning it and letting it go, leaning it and letting it go. It will perfectly fall 90 degrees on its side. And so if I flip it over, there's the top of the mold, and I flip it over to the other side, and you can see it kind of wants to roll to that center position. And that's really handy because if you want to stack up a wall, and let's say, usually when you stack these up, you're stacking flat on top of flat on top of flat. And so that's really the way that you would stack up a wall. But sometimes you want to construct this wall laying on its side, and that's easy to do in this case. So you can put one row and put another row and put another row on, so the side is perfectly flat, and leave openings for windows, leave openings for doors, and you can do that because of the nature of these actually naturally wanting to fall on their 90-degree side. Now, one of the most difficult elements to deal with on the log cabin are the corners. Now, I did create some special corner blocks for those corners on the model, but let me show you, you don't have to use the corners, but you'll really want to. But first of all, let me cover a couple things about corners. You can, if you like, it's possible to cheat and not use corners at all. So in other words, if I put these down and I put them scraped side down, you can simply butt logs up against the side. And as I mentioned before, because these logs are exactly a 1/2 inch in width, you can actually make this work. So if we got a 2-inch log, we got a 1.5 inch log. So then if I put a 2-inch log on this side, I can overlap that one, and then I can put a 1-inch log over on this side like that. And then I can go ahead and start again with the 2-inch log and put it on this side like this, and I can put a 1.5 inch log here. And then for a final row, I can put a 2-inch log right here, and then I can stack up a 1.5 inch log like that. And you can make your corners like that, and it will work perfectly well. Okay, now I've changed my camera angle to a little more of a top-down view to kind of display what these corner blocks are going to do. First, let me introduce you to the 4 types of corner blocks we have. And I've kind of indicated them on the sheet right here. You'll notice that I've got a few different ones on this plan. I've got a C+, which means a cross. I've got a CV that's right here. I've got a CL, and I've got a C backwards L, like the one that's right here. Let me describe what those blocks are. So first of all, if you look at this C+ on here, which is a cross, that refers to this block right here, which is simply an even cross. The CV that you see is this block right here, where two ends of the corner stick out, and they stick out evenly, kind of you'd look at for a letter V. One of these, the CL, looks like, if you look straight down on it, looks like a normal letter L. We've got the top and then the part that sticks out in front a little bit, and then we've got the last one, which is a C backwards L, and that actually looks kind of like a backwards L. So those are the four corner blocks we have. Now let me describe what the purpose of those corner blocks are and how you use those. If you take two logs and you put them at 90-degree angles and they touch on the corners like that, that is where a corner block comes into play. So in this particular case, if I took a cross and I dropped it in here, it would fit exactly on those logs like that. And the object of a cross is that you could actually continue logs out the other side and continue logs out the other side this way. So it will make a perfect cross and everything will be exactly even. And that's a really handy thing to build with, but usually it's for interior walls or if you want to make a T of some kind. And for the corner of the cabin, when I put these crosses up in a line for the corner of the cabin, they were really boring along the side. It really didn't make it look to me like what a log cabin should look like. So my suggestion is to use these three different corners. Let me show you how to use those. You'll notice on the corner block that you have four sides on this corner block. You have one that's right up against the side of the log, one that's right up against the side of the log, and you got two funky ends that stick out, and they're kind of odd shaped. And they're odd shaped for a couple of reasons. One, so that you don't accidentally put it in like this. You'll go, wow, that doesn't line up at all. Okay, well, I'm going to spin it around. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, see, that lines up a lot better. And it looks like the logs kind of go that way. So whenever you're putting these corners on, be sure that the side that's flat, and is shorn off as close as it can be to the piece, that's what you stick in the corner like that. And for this L mold, it's the same way right here. You got one that's shorn off close, you got one that's shorn off close. That's where it should stick in the corner like that. And of course the other one that's the L that goes the other way, you do the same thing for it, so you can actually put it into a corner like that. And when you use and kind of change up the variety of these three, they give you a nice unevenness on the corner. So for example, what I would do is I would use one of the corners like right here and here. I would go ahead and stack up another log on top of this. I would stack up another log on top of this. And I'll use one of these L shapes right here and I would put it up against there. And you notice one log is shorter here, one log is longer there, so it gives it a really unevenness to it. And so if I go ahead and line up another log right here, and if I line up another log right here, and I use the remainder type of L, this one juts out this way, and actually, you know, so it gives you a really nice unevenness along the ends of it. And you can kind of see an example of this unevenness if I scoot this out of the way, and here's a side that I've already done. If you look at that, you'll really see that those uneven logs, it gives it a really wild appearance on the end. So it looks like somebody just took a saw and hacked off the end at whatever they felt like doing. Now, it does pose a few challenges and a few problems when you have a texture that is this wild. And one of them is what you can kind of see happening right now as I'm stacking these up. These are all 3-inch wall segments, and they're all stacked on top of each other, which forms a pretty obvious pattern. So you're going to have to work around this obvious pattern. And let me show you kind of a quick little example of how you can do that. Now this is a 3-inch log and there's only one on the mold. So whenever you use 3-inch logs together, you don't have the choice of changing from one log to a different log. This is the only log you got. So my suggestion is that you do this. What you do is you start with one log this way, you take the second log and you flip it around to the back side to look like this. The third log, which matches the bottom log, what you do is you flip it upside down, so it kind of turns it upside down like this. The fourth log, when we use the back side, now that matches the second log, but it also, we can flip upside down like that. So basically it kind of looks like we've got 4 different logs here, and you don't really notice right off. I mean, there are some things that you kind of see on there that you look and it's like, oh, here's a double knot and here's a double knot, but you don't really spot that right off. And when you put it up against a building that's far away, you really lose those duplications in the texture. So the next thing I want to show you about is how I sort these log segments and how I use them in a wall so I don't have a duplicate repeated pattern. Here is a number of 1-inch wall sections. What you want to do to sort these, there are 4 different 1-inch log sections. So they're all different carvings. Find the scraped side or the flat side of the block that's facing up right now and put it down against the surface that you're building on. Take every single log that you have. Be sure that the scraped side is facing down. Now with them being scraped down, it's a little bit easier for me to see the top texture. I'm going to move my light source here a little bit so you can kind of see the top texture of the log just a little bit better. So these have kind of an eye in them. So I'm looking at it right now, and I'm sorting these out, so these logs that have the eye in them, those are exactly the same. So I know that these are all the exact same logs. So what I do, I've zoomed out here a little bit, and here I've got a plan of the log cabin, and you notice I have a 1-inch, 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 and a 1-inch, 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 1-inch. You don't want to have all of the same logs on the side, because if you did, you would have an obvious pattern that it's the same log all the way up. So what I do is whenever I draw off of a stack, I always start at the bottom left and take the bottom log, then the next log, then the next log, then the next log, and then I go back to the first log. So let me give you an example how I would lay these down to put them on a plan of something like this. The first log, and you notice I'm going to rotate it because the scraped side of the block should be down against the bottom of the model where the floor of the cabin is going to be. So notice I'm rotating it so that the scraped side is right here. That's the scraped side. The next log I want, I'm grabbing for the next step, and I'm going to put it down like that. The next log I'm going to put here, and then the next log I'm going to put here. And since I'm done with these logs, I now start from this row again. But you know what? I'm not going to use it down. I'm going to take this one down, and I'm going to flip it over to the back side. I'm going to take this one down, and I'm going to flip it to the back side. I'm going to take this one down, and I'm going to flip it to the back side. I'm going to take this one down, and I'm going to flip it to the back side. So of these 8 logs that you see, no 2 textures are alike. Now when I start back up at the top, I've got a 1-inch one here, I've got a 1-inch one up here, and I've also got a 1-inch one up here. And you know, I do notice that this texture and this texture are exactly the same, but they're so far apart that you're really not going to notice it. I'll move the light source over here so you can see the texture a little better. If for some reason you get one that really does bother you when you look at it, feel free to turn it around to the back side, and that one matches this one over here, but it's so far away, I don't think anybody will see it. Another course strategy you can do is you can take the block and flip it upside down, and then you may not notice the texture quite as bad that way. But that's the method I use so that I don't get obvious repeated textures throughout. And so the same thing goes here. I've got a 2-inch, a 2-inch, a 2-inch, and a 2-inch. If I just grab these logs off the stack and I put a 2-inch here and I put a 2-inch here, these two are obviously the same log. And I've got another couple of 2 inches here. Let's say I've got another 2-inch one up here, and I've got another 2-inch one up here. And if you notice, these two are obviously the same log, but if I take the time and flip it over to the back side, and I take this one and flip it over to the back side, at this point, since I have 2 different 2-inch logs, and I have a different side showing each time, no 2 of these textures are repeated. There we go. Yeah, see, that's where it goes. So this door, you pop that sucker out, and you actually have 1/2 of a door like that. So what you want to do is you'll notice that 1/2 of the door has hinges, The back side of the door has the knob. And you'll also notice that there is kind of an edge that's kind of an uneven edge on one of them. The back scrape edge you don't worry about. It's the uneven edge that you worry. So what you do is you take two identical door pieces. See, we got two knobs, and see, we got two hinges. What you do is you put these so where the notches line up on the front. So what I've got is I've got hinges on one side, I've got the knob on the other, and when you do, there's actually, because of the nature of these, they'll actually slide together and stop right there. Okay, you see that? You see how they kind of slide together? That helps you get them together and kind of interlock in the right position. Now, when I plan the doors on the model, most of the doors I plan are actually 2 inches high. So this is actually, you see, we've got 4 half-inch logs, that adds up to 2 inch. You'll notice that if I put this door in here, that is actually going to be a little bit, that's going to leave us with a gap at the top of the door. So if I squeeze that guy in there like that, you can kind of see that I've got a half-inch gap above the top of the door. And that's why on this mold I have made some half-inch logs. In other words, or half logs. These are actually a 1/4 inch thick, and they kind of look like this on the very end. So that's what these logs look like, and they're meant to fill in across the top of the door. So in this particular case, if you don't have any kind of floor, if this log is built straight on the ground or straight in the dirt, what you would do is you would take this segment right here, and you would put it up against the top, and you would just glue it in like that. And now you have a door that's exactly going to fit in that doorway just like that. Now, most of the doors I have are 2 inches tall because I assume that a lot of people have my other molds and they are going to be putting a floor in here of some kind. So in this particular case, let's say these are planks for mold number 226. Let's say if I want to actually put a door in here, and this is actually kind of tight. Let's see if I can squeeze those in there. Okay, so if I actually make a floor inside my cabin, this 1/4 inch floor already raises this thing up a 1/4 inch. So I don't have to fill in the top with anything. So because of that 1/4 inch floor tile, that actually lines up just perfect like that.